welcome to the House of Rahmas. Today, it's only one in the house. So it's Clayton Thomas. Dr. Rahm is not with us today, so this could get interesting. But the fun subject of the decade happens to be the concept of biohacking, whether you're sitting in a refrigerator or a freezer or jumping in a river or taking supplements or drinking coffee. Everything seems to go around biohacking. So if you're going to talk biohacking, it's good to have professionals. So we've got Dallas McClain today, who's got an extensive background in the subject. And Dallas, thanks for popping on with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I don't know about professional, but we'll find out.
And now, is that not the point of this entire space, right? The concept of biohacking is something that is not new, honestly, but this genre, as it's become, is a very wide landscape. So give me the brief synopsis on what your journey is, what you're doing now, and then we'll dive into this, and then we'll have some fun hacking at biohacking.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're absolutely right. Biohacking approach from the perspective of humility is the right approach because we don't know everything, and experimenting and discovery is one of the greatest things that we can do as human beings, as rational human beings. So I love what you said there. Just a little bit about myself. Born in North Carolina, moved to Florida. Oh, hey, Dr. Rahm.
Hi
there. Moved to Florida in 2015. Met my wife, and she got me on the right track in a lot of ways. And she studied her master's in Barcelona, Spain. So we moved there together after we got married and lived there for a year. I taught English. Got a certificate in teaching English. I have a background in biological sciences. So I kind of already had a little bit of the background. I'm the editor for Biohackers magazine. That's how I started out. They were starting a company over there, and I joined as the only native English speaker that could help edit things. So it worked out with my background, and lo and behold, I came back to the States after a year because my daughter was born. And we wanted to raise her in the United States. And I live in Orlando. I have 2 children now. The company almost dissolved. Most of the people left after the release of the first issue, and it was just not up to their expectations. And another guy and I decided to keep it going because we saw the potential there. So it was just 2 of us for a while. We recently brought in a few more people. John Falakera and Arjun are the main guys, along with myself, that run the core of the company. But now we've released over 20 issues. We've been a company for more than 3-4 years now. We have a lot of subscribers and a big following on social media networks. And we just love working with individuals like yourselves, entrepreneurs, people in the biohacking space that are really more into it for the benefit of the community rather than, overnight success or anything like that. So that's what we're trying to bring to not just the health community, but the community as a whole, that everyone, lives in, so that they can find out about these alternative health benefits that biohacks, present themselves. I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
It provides a pretty good landscape for where we can go, because I think I have the ultimate biohacker next to me. As she joined.
I don't know about that, but I do know that we went back and forth, so I apologize about this, Dallas. We thought about you being on the House of Rahmas, which we jointly do, and then Under the Red Chandelier, and then Cure the Causes, because we have 3 podcasts, and really your talk fits into all of them. And then Clayton does podcast as well, so we kind of space them out. Cool. But I was in another meeting, and I said, I realized that you were the one that was in here. So I was like, I got to be on this podcast because I want to ask him how he got here. And I'm glad you brought it up, Clay, because it's interesting. You can have a great topic and you can have a great mission, but if you don't have the right people that are willing to follow that through, things don't happen in life. And I do think I've been around biohacking most of my career, whether it was human monoclonal antibodies or cloning or patents or different things I've been involved in with projects. But working with the right people in the biohacking and biotech space has always been extremely important. I'm speaking at a conference, which I'll have to send you, in Warsaw, which is about biotechnology and biohacking in the next week and a half. And then with the Vatican and a project and a book that we're writing on biohacking. So I really want to bring you in to a lot of these discussions that we're having if you're interested.
Yeah, of course.
I do think there's a movement right now of people really trying to look at the space. And, you hear people talk about anti-aging, or you hear people talk about sustainability, longevity. To me, to do any of those things effectively, you've got to have some version of biohacking. And it needs to be discussed among groups, because if we can keep on this path of doing different things in this space, but work alongside each other, we can really accomplish a lot of things. And right now, some of the stuff that's happening is you have a lot of silos in this space where successful companies really bring all these players together to create even more, because our world has changed so dramatically. I always say this, that's a great thing. We can do so many good things that we wouldn't have been pressed to do before, because when bad things happen in the world, or things that we perceive as negative, it gives us the opportunity to step up as scientists and do something positive, because we are evolving. You can't biohack into things, and DNA and genetics and epigenetics are all a part of that, but it's a longer story. So I love the mission that you're doing, and that you're basically pioneering, because a lot of people shied away from the discussions and the space because they don't understand, and having the tough conversations can be hard. Like, some people will hear biohacking and they think something negative, right? I'm sure you know that. They're like, wait, you're messing with things that God created. Well, the truth is, we're here to make changes. So as we evolve as human beings, we can become a light and do wonderful things for something, in my belief, that's higher than us. Like, I used to sit in rooms, and I was the only one that had a belief in a higher being, because I did. I believe in God. I had that belief, and I believe He gives us our minds and our spirits and our will so that we can do these things to help Him. And I'm so thankful that, because you shared a little bit with me about your beliefs and yourself. I think it's great that we can incorporate our beliefs into this. We don't have to say, okay, we are God, so we're biohacking. Instead, we can say, this is an idea I got from something higher than me, someone higher than me, and we're incorporating this to help human beings on this earth. And I love your mission because of that. I really do.
So you've got access to a lot of people coming to you, products, services that are like, hey, we want to talk about what we do. With what you've seen over the last three or 4 years, as you mentioned, this concept is probably the most holistic and most complex out there, right? To truly play with biohacking in general, you've got to work with every operational system. And in my argument, you really have to have a bioscience engineering background.
Well, I don't know if I agree with them. I personally think that I've had experience. I've been in 88 countries. I've met a lot of different people. And I'm telling you, honestly, Clayton is very scientific. I have worked with scientists throughout the world that don't have a formal education in bioscience engineering, and yet they've been taught certain techniques. I'll use an example. I was working with some scientists from Romania that are using different types of quantum physics, right, to really help with people and aging, as well as people becoming even better cognitively. And we do that, I know, as well with the things that I do. But they're using different light therapies to heal and to help biohacking in different ways with human beings and animals. And they were onto something. Again, they did not have a formal education, but they were being educated and they were trained by people that did, or that had learned things as well. Because in a lot of countries, you don't have like a formal bioscience engineering background. And I'll use a further example. In Saudi Arabia and Dubai, where I spent a lot of time recently, they don't have the labs we have in the United States. They don't have the education that really is focused on bioscience engineering or biohacking. That being said, they've been exposed to techniques throughout their culture and their history, and they come up with ideas that absolutely will work they may not have the same labs we have or manufacturing, but they've got their minds, right, who are able to evolve and to innovate. And so sometimes, Clay, I think hopefully you're doing this, Dallas, bringing all of that together, through what you're doing, and not just the nanobiotechnologists like me or the PhDs, because there's a lot of people that are some of the most brilliant scientists in biohacking, in my opinion, that don't have that education.
So what are some of the
Most definitely.
What are some of the cool things you've seen so far? And how you guys are working to tie them together and provide some insight and knowledge into the space for consumers, because there's so much information, there's so much data, there's so much noise, right?
Yeah,
There's so much trash, and you guys actually get to sift and sort through a lot of that. So what's some of the cool stuff you've seen so far that works?
Yeah, it's a lot of deciphering. There's some stuff that we've tried that seems to work, that is like cutting edge stuff that really not a lot of people have heard of, which is pretty cool. There's this brain engagement device that you can wear called a neurovisor that uses light patterns and special sounds to initiate certain brain waves that help your brain adapt and help neuroplasticity. And they've done some studies on that just recently in California that show promising results. So there's a lot of interesting things. There's, of course, you guys have probably heard of it, light water, deuterium depleted water, which is pretty interesting, of how it kind of gets the toxins out of your body and helps to optimize your ATP pump and your mitochondria. There's so many. There's one recently that in our issue number 21, we talked about Stemrigen, which is basically a pill that you can take. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Talking about Christian this morning, actually.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah, Christian's the man. Yeah, he's great. So yeah, that for the listeners and people that don't know is basically a pill of compounds from natural plant ingredients all over the world that have been shown to really help initiate the innate process of healing from the body, which involves releasing stem cells from the bone marrow. And it kind of expedites this process and puts more stem cells into the bloodstream to navigate and find the area of trauma and heal. So it's been really cool talking with him as well.
It's going to be a fun conversation because one of us has a lot of experience working with stem cells. This one.
Yeah, I used to work a lot with stem cells and
cool.
mitochondria and ATP, and did a lot with stem cell regeneration, as well as, I'm sure you know about bioprinting. So I'm trying to think of what year I was brought into all those projects. 2010, 2011, I was brought into the bioprinting projects, worked with some of the top bioprinting companies in the world, and was able to be a part of that, which I loved. Regenerating and bioprinting the skin and the body was fantastic. It was one of my favorite things that I worked on. I also have to tell you, as far as the cap with the energy and the light, there's the project I was talking about in Romania. They also were looking at using that for time travel, and time travel is real. I'm sure you know that. The black hole is real. String theory, we used to say they weren't real, and we're taught in school, and it was a theory, right? But now we know that it actually exists. We recognize it now. And time travel in the 80s, you were able to take an orange 80 miles in a second in Germany. They were able to do it in a split second. But going back was next to impossible. So there's some really interesting things. I'll have to introduce you to some people. Sasha introduced me to them. That they're saying, and again, I don't know, Dallas, if I have not investigated enough. In theory, some of their thought processes, in my opinion, work, because I was part of a project that had to do with Mars and time travel. But they're using this different type of sound and energy and lights to basically have people go forward and backward in time. I'm questioning whether part of that is unlocking some of the subconscious of people. Maybe they're actually not doing that, but they think they're doing it. I don't have a conclusion on it, but it's interesting to me. Like what I've learned to do is to not close my mind off. And because I'm sitting there in classes at Harvard and we're discussing Mars, and I'm sitting there and thinking, well, gosh, this is something that's going to happen a long time from now. And that's not true, right? We have everything built where you can have people on Mars, you can get sick, you can grow plants, you can treat them in a hospital there. Everything has really been built out, and all the details down to a T are done. Now, scientists like me are involved in either classes or projects where we're still working on that. But if, the issue is if I'm sitting at a dinner table here in Nashville, Tennessee, and someone brings that up at the dinner table, and if I were to say that, it would look like maybe I was crazy because most people haven't heard about it, right? So they're like, wait a minute, there's no way that that's true. And even my son, he went to a school here in Nashville. When he tried to discuss the black hole theory, they told my son that he was crazy, that didn't exist and that couldn't happen. And I wanted to go talk to the school and say, it's actually one of the things we're looking at as a possibility to save the earth and to save people on the earth, right? So that we can go somewhere else. But you still have this closed mindedness. And I'm going to tell you, the school he went to is a Christian-based school. So even in the Christian community or the Islamic community, pick a religion, you still have these people that are very close-minded about science, because for some reason, a lot of people will think, well, if that's true, that disrupts my belief. And not to get too much into this, but for me, it doesn't disrupt my belief at all. In fact, it gives me an even higher belief in something much greater than me, and understanding that there's so little we know and there's so much for us to learn. And that doesn't impact me at all spiritually. It just makes me stronger.
Right.
So I hope that we continue as scientists and business people to not close our minds, but to pay attention and to really help create and evolve so that we are here on this earth or somewhere else where we can live as people and learn lessons so that we become higher evolved. I don't mean to pitch that to you on this call, but for me, it's something we've got to do. We've got to stop the conversations. I think it's really hard even for a mom. You said you have 2 kids. I have 4. When I'm sitting with other moms and dads, and then my belief process, and it's not even a belief process because I've been exposed to these things and seen them, and they're teaching it in certain classes that are either master's or PhD classes at some of these universities. There's truth to it, like Space Station X, right? There's some truth to it. But the vast majority of the world, and I can't figure this out, they don't believe it and they don't know about it. So I hope your magazine and I hope your social influence and all your platforms can get this information out there, because I'm continuously amazed at how we're not educating people on really how we've changed and things we've proven now.
Yeah. And if I may speak to what you're saying, I think part of the problem is there's been a big shift in philosophy since maybe the 17th century, where Descartes came out with his philosophy of, I think, therefore I am. He taught people to doubt everything, to doubt so much that there's all this skepticism in the world now. And we have 2 extremes. Like you said, from the Christian community, some people are only about their faith. And when science intrudes on their faith or challenges their faith, they stick with their faith. That's called fideism. And then in the scientific community, we have just strictly rationalism, extreme rationalism, where they don't even pay attention to the faith at all. But if we look to what a lot of great writers have talked about in classical philosophy, and Pope John Paul says this, not to get too religious, but on the way to heaven, you're carried by 2 wings. One wing is faith, and the other is rationality, the mind that God gives us to investigate the world and come to conclusions. And we're never going to know everything because we're not God, right? And that's where revelation comes in, and things are revealed to us, and there's mystery, and that's where we have to have faith to keep going and see things. So I think it takes both of those things, and they don't go against each other as much as the world wants to tell us. Faith and reason, they work together. And that's what really makes us become the whole person.
Well,
I agree with that. I agree 100%.
It's really the interesting aspect. If you go back and you look at the beginning of physics and really the beginning of the sciences, you've got some of the earliest great minds in science. They started studying the sciences and trying to understand physics because they were trying to comprehend the world that God had created.
Exactly.
They understood that, okay, there is a creation. There has been some semblance of creation. Now we're starting to question what, because of understanding quantum physics and fractals and holograms and what we are, as far as at our basic level, we are light, which gets into the deepest levels of science. but it's also the purest point of what our spirituality is, because illumination and the illuminaries and, you know, what became the Illuminati, but the understanding of light and the principle of understanding that we are light. So whether it's what science is saying, that we are light, or whether it's the spiritual side that's saying we are light, you go, wait a minute, you're saying the same thing, but you're looking at it from a different lens. And it's the translation of those perspectives that are coming together. Right?
Yeah, but they have different approaches. Like if you talk to a lot of people scientifically, they're not going to see the side you're saying. Like he's right. They're not going to have that perspective at all. They don't think it's related. Like I've worked with a lot of nanobiotechnologists. I remember this transplant surgeon that just cut me off when I was trying to explain anything, even remotely spiritual, because, you know, he didn't believe in anything that had to do with that, because as scientists, we're creating, right? But then I had to bring up, but we're created by something. Like we're here to create because someone created us. And it didn't go very far. I'll have to be honest with you. He embarrassed me in front of the whole class. He kind of made fun of my belief. But I do think if we can somehow broach both sides and come to some kind of understanding, it will make both sides go further. I don't do well with ignorance. I have to be honest. And I say that in a nice way, because ignorance is not stupidity. It's just a lack of knowledge.
And a choice thereof.
Yeah, sometimes it's a choice, because I think the more you know, the more you are supposed to teach. You know, I always say you're judged. I tell the kids all the time, you're judged according to what you know, because some people just don't know, right? So I feel like we're obligated to get some of this information out there that's factual. I think it's important to say, here's an area we don't know about, but we're researching this and we're looking into this. Like I just said to you about Romania. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know about it. I was very honest with you. What I don't like, and I'm telling both of you guys this, I don't like when someone betrays something as a fact that's not a fact. I really like for people to say, we're looking into this, or this is something that we're interested in. I think one of the things that's given biohacking and bioscience engineering and nutraceuticals, supplements a bad name is people will make a claim they don't have any factual information on. And, you know, I try to be very cognizant of that. So I'm very careful about it. Like I do products that detox the body, work with mitochondria, ATP. I do all of that, right? But if you ask me, have you done research on it? We're doing a patient registry in 76 countries right now. We're doing case studies. We're doing double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. We start at the end of the year. Yes, but a lot of the information is not conclusive. And that's why, for example, Dallas mitochondria, I don't know if you know this, but you can't even use mitochondria on a label in Europe, because it really has not been proven in a lot of the minds of scientists. Now, I'll tell you what I definitely have worked with telomeres, mitochondria, ATP. So I believe, again, I believe in all of it. Like I've worked with it. I've seen it. I've even done small research projects. But in the scientific community, even with your FDA and your FTC, you have to be really careful about making any claims that have to do with the mitochondria, because it hasn't been proven in a lot of people's minds that it actually is true. And it is true if you ask me, but I have to tell you, just as full disclosure, there's a lot of scientists that disagree with me, just like there's a lot of scientists that disagree with telomeres because they don't understand it. So again, I try to say my opinion, educate, and then also I try to say people don't agree with me so that people know this is my belief, but you're going to get pushback. That way you're preparing people for, this is what I've learned, this is what I know, but there's pushback in the different areas on this. I think in the next 2 years, this is going to evolve and change, just like the black hole theory, and it's all going to come out. I still remember when I was sitting there, we were talking about genetics, and someone brought up epigenetics, and I had tons of doctors that disagreed with me. I was on a panel. They were like, epigenetics doesn't exist. Environmental factors do not cause autoimmune disorders. Environmental factors are not responsible for people getting sick. They just didn't agree with me. And I was very young, and I got so mad in that discussion that I almost got up and left the panel discussion because I was beating my head against the wall. Now, if I say that, 90% of the scientists in the room are going to agree with me, right? But I think
Right.
this is how we have to evolve. And I do think that's like at your conferences and different things you do. That's why debating's okay. It's healthy debating.
It's
But
great to debate. I agree. And it's like that law of acceptance. But I don't know if you've read the book by Simon Sinek, the Why book, but there's like that curve of acceptance. And the first part is always ridicule, where people just make fun of it and everything. And then it slowly gets accepted. And then the majority accepts it. And then the lesser majority. And then it's a trend, you know?
yeah, I say that when we do talks. Clayton's heard me a lot. I say, you know, I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, but soon they will. And soon this information is going to happen and it's going to get out there, just like about Mars. Space Station X, I'm pretty upset. I was supposed to meet with their president and I have to be in Rome at the time. So I don't get to meet with the president.
But you get to meet with the Pope. So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I could meet with the president of SpaceX. Sorry, I have to get knighted.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I say. I don't ever know.
No, that's not what she says. That's how I put it.
Never say it. I actually think they're equal. I mean, I don't listen. I'm not here to judge or to know what's more important. But I think if you look at, for example, the Vatican, if you look at the Jesuits, for example, let me take that. They really have a strong foundation of looking at different things and exploring and understanding things. Yes, they're based in tradition. Yes, they're based in ritual, but they also are scientific, and especially your Jesuits, right? And how they approach things. I worked at Spring Hill College for a while in graduate school. And it was so interesting because their minds were wide open because that's how they were taught, you know, to learn. And then you look, we actually know some people on the Space Station X project, same thing. They are wide open. And I'm jealous sometimes of them because they get to go into a room, read all day, debate, argue, study.
Cool.
I want to stay in school forever, which I basically have my whole life. But because that's how I learn. And when someone proves me wrong, I've learned this. I've been wrong so many times. I failed so many times. When I learn something from someone, whether they're less or more educated to me is irrelevant. And when I close my mind, for example, to a 5-year-old trying to tell me something because I think I'm smarter than that 5-year-old, I'm definitely going to fail. Because I've got to open my mind to what everyone thinks, and not just people that have learned from textbooks and take tests on it, right? I've got to learn from the person at Starbucks or the person that's a janitor in the office that came up with something that I didn't think of. And that's why I think that we have so much to learn, whether it's a president or the Pope, or whether it's someone that you meet just going out to have coffee. Again, this is going back to you because I'm going to say this, the exposure I've had to what you do, you are opening up different people and different thought processes and not just limiting it to the top, you know, president of a company like Space Station X. As important as they are, there's other people that haven't reached that yet that are equally important, in my opinion, and will bring some credibility and bring advancements in biohacking.
Okay, most definitely. If I could just say, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Every man is my superior in some way, and that way I learn from him." I mean, we can learn from anybody.
It's one of my favorite quotes.
One of my favorite authors of all time wrote that we're all an imperfect piece to a perfect puzzle.
I wrote that.
I like it. That's a good quote.
I do a lot of paintings, and I did one painting that Clayton saw, and I said, everyone wants all my pieces, but I want to keep all of them. And then on the other back, I wrote that about, you know, there's so many imperfect pieces, but it's a perfect puzzle. And I think we meet everyone on purpose. I think it's designed. When people start talking to me about fragments and fractals and how we're a hologram, that doesn't bother me at all because I'm like, that's awesome. We're light. You know, that's that whole thing. I can wrap my head around that in a million ways. I just have more questions. That's what happens. Yep. Then I have all these other questions.
So the fun subject of the day, and this will get into some interesting ideas. DMT. Is it the epitome of the biohacking conversation right now of how people chasing it, trying to understand it, trying to figure out how to produce it? What are you seeing? Because we have our pathways of what she's created. There's mushrooms, and then there's endogenous production through the gut and through the pineal gland. But what?
Mm-hmm.
But why is that so important? I mean, like, I'm just being, I want to ask Dallas.
Yeah, I know. This is what
Why is
Yeah.
that so important? Like, from my viewpoint, I'm never chasing something like that. I have to be honest. Like, for me, I love the mind that I have, and I'm using it to the best of its ability. And I do nootropics that are natural. But
Yeah.
I have to be honest, Clayton, why is that such a heavy topic? Why is that such a hot topic all the time with people? It's like, I feel really bad for whoever's watching this, because I'm just going to say this. People that have to do a drug or have to use a substance to get something higher. I do understand using positive plants, which is a lot of what I do, right? To do things. But I don't understand, I'm just going to be honest, having to hallucinate or having to become something that you're not. And I guess that's just me. Maybe I'm boring. I don't understand it. So if that is the target of biohacking, just so you know, Dallas, it's not mine.
Yeah. No, good disclaimer. I mean, I was just going to say, I don't know a ton about DMT. I've never used DMT. I do know that there is some consensus that wants only the positive effects of DMT, not the tripping hallucinogenic, but more like the thinking clearer or having a revelation or, having some crazy new idea that they want to follow in on, being more creative. The neurovisor is one of those things that's supposed to kind of tap into those same pathways and mimic the same effect without being hallucinogenic or without being a drug or without tiring out things. So like light patterns and sound and stuff like that is supposed to tap into the same neural pathway to get an creative type of approach to
I think it
thinking.
does. And let me tell you why I think it does. So I did a dissertation, and I worked with the National Institute of Mental Health as a research director on a project that was for seriously persistently mentally ill. And we were able to look at pathways. And of course, when you look at the brain of someone that's schizophrenic or bipolar, you're able to tap in and watch the different way that they're hallucinating or they're able to see things we can't see. And that always was a trigger for me, because I would see patients and they would tell me what they were saying. And so I never really cut them off from, well, I had some patients that scared me, so I kind of cut them off. But I always listened to what they were saying. And then we would look at their pathways and how they were able to produce these different chemical, basically ability to see things that other people couldn't. Right. So their brain mapping was so different, and the colors and even the way they would hear sound. We would do sound therapy with them. And sometimes I was like jealous of them, because I'm like, wow, they're able to see things that a lot of people aren't. Through that project, I was able to look at my brain mapping, and I'm what's considered hypomanic, which means I'm not manic. I don't suffer from depression, but I'm almost to that level where I'm able to produce things really quickly and create. And I'm really thankful for that. But because of that, I'm probably the last person that's going to try something that's going to scare me, because I do understand, and I'm sure you guys do too. There are certain people with their brain mapping and the way that they're made, that if you put them on certain DMT, I understand using microdosing. I understand what people are doing. And I do microemulsions, microdosing with a lot of formulas I do, because I do bioavailability and I use natural ingredients. But there's some people that won't recover from that. There are some people that can go over the edge and they have no idea. And that's why I'm extremely careful. Now, what you're talking about with the light therapy and how they're using sound and light, that's what we did. And it was extremely successful at doing things with people, which is why I do believe in that type of technology.
So one of the interesting things that we found in doing a bunch of research, and I get to take what she's created and apply it into a population and actually watch it behave. But in talking with people about this DMT conversation, so many people want to talk about mushrooms, right? There's the big conversation about all kinds of fungus. And then you have the scientific conversation of fungus, that it's fungus that is the biggest problem in us.
But there's good fungus.
There's good fungus. There's good fungus. But when you understand that from a biohacking perspective, this operating system is the most complex computer made, right?
Well, yeah, the problem is there's not one computer that's the same. So that's the issue. You have to be careful. There's
that, but when you start playing with an operating system, you have to understand that you're working with the entire operating system. You can't just say, I'm going to tinker with this one part, because we used to think from homeostasis and balance that we're like a teeter-totter, right? That we're trying to create balance. That's not true. we're like this innately complex mobile that it's all constantly balancing. And if you tinker with one area and you pull on one area, everything else is going to adjust. And if you pull too hard on one area, you can pull the whole thing off kilter. So playing, and especially playing with the brain.
But usually with light and sound,
you don't have
like,
a problem.
You don't have as many issues with that. No.
But this is where with you, I'm so big in having the conversation about having an understanding of bioscience engineering and anatomy and physiology and such, because the pineal gland is what produces DMT endogenously.
Yeah.
If it's decalcified, if it's recrystallized,
there's different theories on
properly.
that. No, there's different theories because that's one of your main sources, and we know that. But there's also a lot of information on different areas of the body does that with.
Yes.
Like, I mean, you're connected, Clay, even with the gut and the enzymes and let me just,
and it's those pathways of taking care of the gut, feeding the gut, allowing the proper dopamine and serotonin to be produced endogenously, so your pineal gland can get the serotonin it needs to produce melatonin and DMT, which is where deep sleep and REM sleep come in, and lucid dreaming. That's done endogenously. Then you have the chemical component of, okay, I want to like go nuts and do astral projecting, which you can open up areas of the world and of the universe in your brain and in your body that you might not be ready to get in touch with yet. And in some instances, you might not come back from.
Some of those people are hallucinating.
Yes.
Like, some of that's not real. That's the problem with some of those different areas.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
And
I mean, again, I could be wrong. I just know that when it goes over a certain edge, when you're doing brain mapping as scientist, you understand that they can never recover and never come back. And then they see only dark things. Like, I have been in projects where they saw very dark things, which, Dallas, is why when we do all these root U calls, I always educate on safety issues. I always educate on what's the worst case scenario if someone takes too much of this product, even though I only use natural. And I actually am probably one of the few scientists. I've worked on THC, and I've worked on THC on a project that had to do with babies and tumors, right? And when I was working in the pharmaceutical, and then epilepsy with Novartis, they were testing it and actually became the #1 drug in Australia. Those projects were for health reasons, right? But we were able to see, even in small amounts, how it could help with certain brain tumors, but on some of the children, it would really hurt. Same thing when it comes to certain types of fungus and mushrooms. I just think people have to be extremely careful and extremely educated on that. And another thing, Dallas, one of the problems I have is you have all these people talking DMT and all this stuff they want to do, but they're getting products from a company or people that don't know about it. It hasn't been studied. And I just worry about the kids. Like, I have four early 20s, 2 are teenagers. So I'm just telling you, every time I say something, I think of one of my kids listening to me. And then I kind of, in my mind, think of the other people that don't know me, that trust me. And I have to care compassionately and sincerely and make sure I don't say something ever that misleads people. I just want to be really careful, even when we talk about this topic, that I understand it's cutting edge. I understand it's a hot topic. And I'm sure, well, I've seen you have different people talking about it, right? But I just want us to make sure that we tell people it is one of those areas you have to be careful about before you go out there and just try all these different things that you're reading about. You've got to be extremely careful.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. My wife always tells me, because people will send us stuff like, have you read about that? Like, should you be trying that at the same time as this? And I'm like, oh, those are good questions, and I'll ask or I'll research and everything. But what you guys are saying about DMT, it is a hot topic, primarily because of how it affects people and where they can get to. But you got to start asking yourself, like, is it morally or ethically right when someone takes it to escape reality and, at the risk of being stuck in no man's land? And then once people lose a grip of reality, what is there to life anymore? I mean, you have to ground yourself in reality to really have the best perspective of taking in all the things that life throws at you and discovering the truth about the world. And when what's that? I'm sorry.
I'm so glad you said that, because I need people to hear that, because if they're going to listen to this, they've got to hear it. Life's not perfect. And part of that is learning from the hard times and not escaping from the hard times.
Exactly. I mean, one of the best sayings is like, when you're suffering, just, try to get through the suffering, but offer the suffering for something bigger than yourself, like trust in the will of the higher power that you're going to get somewhere, and reality, when you have an understanding of reality, you're just better able to make smart decisions in your life that not only affect yourself, but everyone around you for the better.
I agree. That's very wise.
Okay, so what's the best takeaway besides reading Biohacking magazine, which we'll have a link for here?
Well, he's the editor-in-chief, correct?
So I'm saying the best takeaway from him.
So I gotta tell you, I was on a call with about the project with the book and the Vatican, and they brought your name up. And they said, "Do you know Dallas?" And I said, "I actually do know Dallas."
No, they didn't.
I promise. This was
the Vatican.
A few weeks ago. It's a guy that's working with them on the project, and they asked if I was familiar with what you were doing, and I said, "Yes, I am." So I don't know if they contacted you or not, but I will put you guys all together because they did ask if I knew, because this is a guy that lives in Rome. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I would love to talk with anyone from over there. Yeah. Great. Wow. That's exciting.
I'm happy because I thought, well, maybe Dallas doesn't like them and I should.
No. I'm open to it. I'm open to it for sure.
What's the piece of advice, the best takeaway you've got for the noobs that might be wanting to understand, this concept, or, for those that have been following this for a bit? What's the best thing they can take away right now?
Best thing they can take away from just biohacking in general, or are we talking about the magazine?
Both.
Okay. For the magazine, if you're going to get into reading the magazine, I would just say, write drunk and edit sober if you're going to be writing anything or creating anything. I don't know who said that. It's unanimous. It's an anonymous quote, but I heard it the other day and I thought it was funny. No, but seriously, biohacking is a big industry. I think you have to kind of do your own research a lot of times and really question things, but not to the point where it's going to hold you back from actually trying something and being too afraid to try something new because it's not in line with traditional medicine. So be open to the preventative approach of medicine and what it has to offer, which is what I think a lot of the biohacking companies are trying to push. Focusing on your health today so you don't have to focus on your sickness years down the road is the main thing. So doing little things to start out is great, like tiny little hacks, because that gets you into the biohacking space. But before you even get into the crazy technological stuff, you got to start from a clean slate, right? So you have to get your body in the right frame to take control of your health, to take back control of your health so that you're not suffering from these chronic illnesses. And then you can go on to try and increase your performance or become superhuman or whatever you want to do in an ethical way, right? So I would say it starts with controlling your health, then planning how you want to become, and then trying to incorporate those new biohacks slowly and not all at once.
That's great advice, because I even tell people when they try products, don't try everything at once. And I know Clayton has different advice, but that's what I would say, because then you can pay attention to what's happening in your body. And I think that's And anyway, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I know we're going to have you back, and then I'll connect you with some of the other people I'm working with in this space, because I think connecting all of us together will make us even have more advancements and educate people even more.
I would love that. Yeah.
Like and subscribe to the magazine below.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great weekend, Dallas. I hope you and your family have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Y'all do the same. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.